Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. And in the interest of time, we will start our program, but please continue to enjoy your lunch. Welcome to our State of the State. We're so delighted to have you here. We're very grateful to Lincoln Financial Group for sponsoring this event once again this year. My name is Tim Sink. I am president of the Greater Concord Chamber of Commerce. And as usual, I'm going to give you a couple of quick announcements, some upcoming events that you may be interested in. We are partnering with the Business and Industry Association of New Hampshire for their event, Croissants and Crossover, on April 1st. That is a virtual event from 10 to 11 a.m. Any of these events I'm talking about, just go to the Chamber landing page, concordnhchamber.com, and you can click on the link and register. So that is on April 1st. We have an event for new members and existing members that would like to get reacquainted with Chamber programs and services. We call it Meet Your Chamber. This is a meeting at the Chamber of Commerce, light breakfast served April 6th from 8 to 9 a.m. and we'll walk you through all the benefits of membership and programs and ways you can get involved. Just let us know if you'd like to attend. We will be hosting the State of the City coming up soon, April 7th, and that is a breakfast meeting, 7:30 a.m. at the Holiday Inn with Mayor Jim Goulet and also City Manager Thomas Spell. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Our next Business After Hours is April 12th at 5:30 p.m. That will be hosted by Feathered Friend Brewery, the new brewery on South Main Street, and Smoke Show Barbecue. So beer and barbecue, you really can't beat that for Business After Hours. And then finally, I want to mention the Pinnacle Awards Luncheon is coming up. That is going to be on May 18th at a new venue called The Barn at Bull Meadow. Some of you may have been to an event we had there previously. Right now, we are accepting nominations for Small Business of the Year, Business of the Year, Business Leader of the Year, and Nonprofit of the Year. And right on the front page of the Chamber's website, you can click on a link for nominations, and we really encourage you to consider nominating someone. Self-nominations are more than welcome. So that's it for my commercials. At this point, again, I just wanted to mention that we're very grateful to Lincoln Financial Group for hosting this event. They've hosted it for many years. They are big supporters of the Chamber, big supporters of many organizations throughout the state. So we're very fortunate to have them with us. And I want to introduce Jim Cain, who is representing Lincoln Financial, to introduce our speaker today. Jim.
Good. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all today. At Lincoln Financial Group, we're focused on a common purpose: to help provide financial peace of mind to Americans, enabling them to plan for and protect their financial futures. This focus extends beyond our business to our philanthropic efforts and our commitment to the communities in which we live and work. In 2020, we took action to meet the needs of our customers, our employees, and our communities, and expand our efforts to support racial justice and equity. Throughout the pandemic, the Lincoln Financial Foundation increased the contributions to food banks, food pantries, emergency housing, donating $2 million to more than 60 organizations across our communities that serve vulnerable individuals facing hunger and housing crises. Lincoln Financial Group provides guidance and solutions that help empower people to take charge of their financial lives with confidence and optimism. In 2020, we accelerated the pace of our grant processes, contributed $10.1 million, supported more than 330 nonprofit organizations, and tackled issues of food insecurity, housing, education, and financial wellness. Specifically in New Hampshire, we support 16 impactful nonprofit organizations making a difference in this community, including the New Hampshire Food Bank, Concord Coalition to End Homelessness, the Grafton County Senior Citizens Council, Easter Seals New Hampshire, Catch, and multiple Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs. Lincoln employees are committed to community impact, service, and responsibility. That's why it's my honor today to represent the company to introduce New Hampshire's governor. Chris Sununu is the 82nd governor of the state of New Hampshire and is currently serving in his third term. Governor Sununu lives in Newfields with his wife Valerie and their 3 children. And the governor just told me he correctly selected St. Peter's in the March Madness bracket, which is perhaps his most impressive feat to date. So please join me in welcoming Governor Chris Sununu.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate that. Thank you. Whoa. Thank you very much. Thanks. I love you, Jim. Great to see everybody. None of that virtual garbage for us, right? No more Zoom. Nothing against Zoom. If you've invested in Zoom, good for you. People are still using it. I'm still doing, you guys, I find I'm still doing a lot of virtual Zoom stuff. But especially with chambers and rotaries, it's interesting that the participation tends to be a little higher, but the engagement is lower, right? It's hard to engage, but it's interesting to see a lot of folks still doing that. But it's fine. It's a good piece of technology. There's always a few silver linings of the gray, never-ending, stormy cloud, sometimes thunderous storm of COVID, right? That's been brutal. I'm going to do my best, and a couple things. I'm going to do my best not to go on and on and on. Many of you have seen me go on and on and on at those press conferences, and I'll do my best not to do that. But I'll kind of give a little bit of a state of the state, a little bit of a rundown kind of where we are, and then questions. I would love it if you guys had questions. And we have a microphone up here and everything if folks want to come up, or you can just shout them out of your chair. I had an interesting side note. I was doing something similar to this about 2 weeks ago, and we took questions, and we were actually, I think we were in that room there, or maybe that room, but it was right here at the Groponi, and someone got up and asked a question, and it was pretty offensive, to be honest. I'm going to be nice. And then literally ran out of the room. I didn't really understand what was going on, so I just answered the question and we moved on. But anything you got on your mind, really. I do appreciate questions because it allows me to say, okay, what I think is important, or what we try to do as focusing on certain priorities within the State House, sometimes we get caught in that bubble, right? So to hear questions, if you're asking the governor a question, my mentality is it's probably pretty important to you, right? And hopefully probably pretty important to your employees, your community, or school, or whatever it is, and that helps us kind of sometimes adjust the boat, send the boat in a slightly different direction. Big thanks, obviously, to Lincoln Financial. You guys are great. I mean, all the philanthropic stuff you do in supporting the chamber, not just here, but really all across the state. It's a great organization, and so obviously, we have a really philanthropic state. We're actually quite blessed in that. One thing I've learned as governor, I travel around the country a lot. I talk to a lot of other governors. In some states, they find good charitable organizations throughout the United States. We're far and away the most charitable country in the world. But here in New Hampshire, it's we don't just see it as charity and we're doing our part. It's really, I think we take it on as an obligation, right? To find those things that we really enjoy doing, to find the areas of our community where we want to make investments. And, we focus on work and the economy and all of that. And then we, whether it's, you got to get back somehow. That's really what this is all about. And that's why I think COVID ultimately went so well for us, because I think everybody took on a part of that responsibility of how do we get from here to there. And there is actually now here, which is good, right? The old new is now the new. The good news is now it's the old new. We're really back to normal. So, state of the state, where are we? We're in great shape. I mean, we fundamentally are in phenomenal shape. It's a very awkward thing to say as I drove past a gas station with $4.30 gas, right? That's a real problem. Inflation, supply chain, these things economically for our country are a real problem. I don't think they're short-lived. I think the peaks that we're seeing right now are just that, they're peaks. I think we could have a rough couple months here. I think things will come down, but overall, we are going to continue to have supply chain issues, this inflationary problem that, frankly, has been driven very much in large part by the Federal Reserve and what they're doing with rates and everything, the social engineering that's kind of coming out of Washington. It's really problematic. And for a lot of, a place like New Hampshire, we have a lot of wealthy families, right? We're one of the wealthiest states in the country. We have some of the highest wages in the country. And so a lot of our families can withstand it. The inflationary pressures. A lot cannot. I mean, fundamentally, inflation is the worst tax you can impose on middle and low income families, because they got to put a gallon of gas in the gas tank just as much as you, and they don't have the means, right? They got to turn on the light switch as much as anybody, and they don't have the means. So really getting us through this, what I think is going to be a rough 12 to 18 months on the inflationary side is going to be a challenge. So here within New Hampshire, let's talk about some of our fundamentals, right? We did all these for years, and people know we've done tax cut after tax cut after tax cut. I focus on the economy. I focus on business, to the point where people say, you focus on businesses too much. You're darn right we do. Because when the economy is working well, when businesses have flexibility, when you guys have the tax breaks, everything else goes up. I was told for years, we all heard for years, oh, with Sununu's tax cuts, with the tax cuts they're doing, we won't have any money left for our programs and all that. We not only have money for all these new programs that we've put into place, we literally have 10 times the surplus that we ever imagined that we would have. The state is flush with money. Why? Families are moving here. Businesses are moving here. Businesses are growing here. Expansion is happening here. And we all know the negative aspect of that is workforce, and we'll talk about some of the issues we have to really take on to make sure we're driving forward a workforce. But New Hampshire is the only state in the Northeast that is gaining population. That has never happened before, right? New Hampshire is the only state actually gaining population in the Northeast last year. So whatever we're doing, it's clearly working. And when you have the economics working right, that creates the opportunity to fulfill the mission. And what is the mission? The mission is making sure we're committing ourselves on mental health. We're committing ourselves on the opioid crisis. We're committing ourselves on education. We're committing ourselves. And when we have the funds and the resources and the ability to do that, we can experiment. We can try new things, right? And we can still make sure not just cities and towns have money coming back from the state, but more money than far and away than ever before has been reinvested into cities and towns to offset things like property taxes. I can't control property taxes. State government can't do that. But with all the checks we've sent back, we're doing more on roads and bridges for cities and towns. I think we used to send about $65 million back for the room and meals tax because of the change in law that Denise Riccardi put forward. We now send over $100 million back to cities and towns on the room and meals tax, plus all the revenue sharing and all those other really good things. We spend more dollars per child in education than ever before, far and away than any other administration. More dollars per child in public education than ever before. So when people come up and say, why are my property taxes going up? I tell them honestly, I don't know. They should not. Mine didn't go up in my town, and yours shouldn't either, because they have so much cash in some of these cities and towns. Do they have to build new schools? Are they out bonding? I'm not sure. You got to look at that. But get engaged, right? Get engaged with your cities and towns. In Concord, it's a little different. I mean, you have it's more of a city, obviously, and there's different dynamics here that come to play. But there's been a lot of financial opportunity throughout this entire country. And right here, I take a lot of pride in the fact I think we're putting a lot of it into good use. We are now ranked the freest state in the country, right? In terms of personal and public freedoms, the #1 freest state in the country. But we also have had one of the lowest death rates from COVID. So we struck that balance, right? We made sure that the economy can move forward. People had personal freedoms, but we really tried to champion that personal responsibility, what we were trying to do, not because the government forced you to, but getting everybody on board with where we needed to go. And because of that, even though places like Massachusetts or New York had some of the highest death rates in the country, and that's horrible, as the tax-free suburb of Boston, as I always like to remind folks that we are, we still made one of the lowest, because we did things fundamentally different here. And I think by keeping things open, but also keeping the right restrictions and regulations and guidelines in place, it kept that balance. And yes, I used to go ad nauseum on my press conferences. You guys saw all that. But there was a very, very intentional reason. My strategy from day one, which, by the way, I knew that my strategy might change, actually. We were writing the playbook, right? March, like exactly 2 years ago. Yeah, I was not standing here. It was a tough time for everybody, right? So many unknowns at that point. But I said, look, whatever happens, we're going to be insanely transparent about what we do. We're going to come out as a team. And even though Dr. Chan and the commissioner and I might disagree on little points here and there, we were a team. And by being super transparent, I think we built a lot of public trust. I was always showing my charts and my data and all of that kind of stuff because I wanted people to understand you might not agree with our decision, but at least there was a reason behind the decision, right? At least there was some logic and some thought, and we weren't just going to play the political game that I kind of predicted was ultimately going to play out. And unfortunately it did in some pretty negative ways with both administrations out of Washington. But here in New Hampshire, we just stayed the course. And we showed the pathway, and we had to move every now and then. We had our surges. One month we were the best in the country at bringing in PPE. 1 month we were at the tip of the spear to be the first state that really hit that winter surge, but we had prepared for it. So within a month after that, we became the lowest hospitalization rate in the country at the same time, because those pieces that we implement, that flexibility we implemented in our healthcare system, really drove the hospitalization rate down, and we were able to come out of it faster than almost anybody else. And it isn't just because the governor said so. I really do believe it's because 1.4 million people in the state really said, okay, here's the mission, here's where we're going, here's the challenges we're facing, and again, I think we were able to keep folks, not, I don't want to say on our side, but with us conceptually in terms of how do we get from A to B and how do we get kind of back to that new normal. So what are we dealing with now? So we have this very strong economy. We have a lot of population growth here, which is very good. The issue we're dealing with is workforce, as everybody knows. And it's not just in nursing, it's in childcare. I was just talking to folks in childcare. It's in restaurants. It's in flower shops. Whatever you do, I mean, I don't know many people that aren't really looking for a lot of workers right now. Construction. And as some of these infrastructure projects start really moving forward, the IIJA out of Washington, the Roads and Bridges Infrastructure Bill, I mean, if you're in that world, if you're laying pipe and building roads and bridges, I mean, you're going to have a lot of work for the next 5 years. I mean, a lot of work. And God knows where we're going to find a lot of those workers, right? So our focus here is to say, what are the barriers? I mean, we've been very successful in bringing young families in, but what are some of the additional barriers that we're still seeing out there? Housing, right? Housing is clearly number one. And by housing, it's not the housing that we traditionally have, right? 2 acres and the white picket fence and, $850,000 for 2,500 square feet. That's all well and good, but it doesn't help the workforce issue that we have, right? We want those 25 to 40-year-old young families that come in, that are going to be part of our workforce, that are our nurses and our teachers, and just the core of our workforce. And we really haven't designed our infrastructure to meet that need. And also understanding, even if you offered them the 2 acres, sometimes they don't want that, right? They want, this next generation doesn't necessarily even want, I know I'm getting older, but I still consider myself quasi-young. But the generation of demographics that are coming into the state, they don't necessarily want what we've built. They have a whole different idea. They like smaller private spaces, bigger communal spaces, more multifamily living. They really love the outdoors. They love food. I mean, the whole generation of Gen Z and beyond, millennials to Gen Z and beyond, they are real foodies, right? So they want the high end and the good restaurants. They're not as good. They don't save as much, but they spend more into the economy. So when we talk to our team about what all the dynamics are, we need to kind of build that kind of infrastructure and promote that kind of business for that next generation so we become attractive. Those businesses are growing here, leaps and bounds, right? There are businesses that are here that are also all across the country that could grow anywhere across the country, but they want to grow here, even with our workforce challenges. Why? Because our productivity in New Hampshire tends to be one of the highest in the country. We have one of the most skilled workforces in the country, and they're paying high wages pretty much everywhere now, so if they're going to pay high wages, they might as well pay some of the highest, which is right here in New Hampshire. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but they also get the productivity out of it. So they're saying, yeah, we could expand anywhere, but we're going to put another 500 jobs here, and we're going to put another 1,000 jobs there. And we're hearing those stories all the time. I have a major manufacturer across the nation, and for whatever reason they're not in New Hampshire yet, and the owner came to me and said, I need a place in New Hampshire. I said, okay, here we go. And I actually walked sites with him, and I'd walk sites, and what he needed 100,000 square feet, and then it was 200,000, and literally he got off the phone with me late last week. He goes, okay, Governor, here's the deal. I need 500,000 square feet. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, and he wanted it up in the North Country near his house. I'm like, I don't know about that. So we looked at some places in Berlin and whatever, and I think we found him a place. But people really want to be here. It's very, very exciting. These businesses can't grow if they don't have the workers, and we can't have the workers if they have no place to live. So it comes back to what I proposed in my State of the State about a month ago, which was just standing in the shower one day. What do we do with all this extra money? And we have a lot of extra money, and believe me, they've left it in the legislature. They'll spend it in about 7.5 seconds. They will find a way to spend $300 million in surplus, as well as the ARP money. But we work with the legislature, and we bring ideas to the table. And one of my ideas is $100 million. It's called the Invest NH Housing Fund. And it really does a couple different things. There's 50 or 60 million in there. The details are going to be worked out through the fiscal committee, probably in April, I think it comes. One of my processes is getting something from an idea to fruition should not take 3 years, like as typical average government does. It should literally take 3 to 6 months. And that's where I think the opportunity lies. So I came up with the idea in January. I talked about in February. We're working out some details with the legislature in March. We'll get it passed hopefully in April. We'll figure out the final application process. I want shovels in the ground this fall. I mean, that's really how fast we're trying to do this. $50 to $60 million to simply match investment. Most developers financially are fine. They know they're going to fill the apartments. They know they're going to fill the housing. That's not the issue. But especially some smaller ones, like up in the North Country or in more rural areas, Those are the ones we're really trying to help be that last dollar in, make sure the projects get over the line. The biggest challenge to housing, though, isn't the finances, right? People have money to invest in these projects. They're going to make the return. It's the permitting process, which tends to be very, very challenging. So at the state level, we've tried to streamline our piece, but at the local level, it's a real problem. Local control is great until you get to housing. And you talk to a small town about building a small, group of 5 or 6 apartments or whatever it is to rent. A lot of towns just don't want to do it. Oh, you want apartments? Go to Manchester, go to Concord. Let them do it. That cannot be the mentality. It really can't. More of our businesses are expanding, not in our small cities, but in our rural areas. And so you need the housing in those areas. So part of this fund is $30 million. It's basically a race. I basically created an award. If you can permit multifamily housing in 6 months, you get $10,000 per unit, being the town or the city. We're going to reward the town and the city for being very fast with the permitting process to offset their cost, to offset their liabilities, to offset their financial risk, right? And we figured this out because we went to a lot of these towns and said, well, these young families, I don't know, they're very costly. My God, is that antiquated thinking. If anyone has that thought, please have extra dessert. Do anything you can. Erase that idea out of your mind. That is so old school thinking, right? We have the funds to offset those costs, and if you don't bring in those families, guess what's going to happen, right? This is the challenge, I'll say, with millennials and Gen Zs across this country. They're having less kids later in life. So naturally, we're going to lose 3 to 5% of kids out of our schools every year, right? Believe me, at some point, your classrooms will be empty, but you're still going to have to keep the lights on in that school. You want these families, right? So that we're funding education, so that they're filling up the houses, so that they're paying their property tax and the system works. This idea that we want less people and we're going to be economically okay is really crazy. It just is. So I'm trying to get folks to be incentivized to say, yeah, we're thinking a little differently. There's money in there. I mean, there's a demolition fund in there. We found all these small rural mill towns, especially up north. Maybe the mills or the small old housing might have asbestos in them, or it's dilapidated housing, no one's really living in it, but they don't have the money to clear it out. Well, I created a $5 million fund just to clear out the old stuff. I mean, literally, it's a demolition fund. And what happens? All the abutters' values go up, right? Because that junky house, those junky houses on the row aren't next to you anymore. The lots are clear, and it incentivizes the developers to come in to put in new multifamily housing with sustainable materials and solar power or whatever they want, right? The right way to do it for the long term. So we're trying to kind of look at this from all aspects, not just say, well, we're going to put more money in housing, but pour more money in housing where it's needed, how it's needed, and incentivize specifically the smaller and rural towns to be part of the solution. Concord's done a pretty good job. Nashua's done a pretty good job. Manchester does a good job. Rochester, Lebanon, Salem, Londonderry, right? They've done pretty good jobs. But we're not talking about the high-end condos, right? We're really not. That's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for the multimillionaires that are downsizing from the $6 million mansion on Winnipesaukee to the $2 million condo because now they're empty. No. We need workforce housing for our workforce. And if you do that, the economics work. And again, that creates opportunity for the state. We can fund things like the programs we need. So let's talk about where some of the big investments are going. Aside from the housing, we're mental health, right? We had made huge strides on mental health in 17, 18, and 19. COVID hits and I think we gotten our wait list, our emergency room wait list for mental health to 0. It had gotten to 0 a month before COVID hit, right? I don't want to say we had taken care of the problem, but we had put the right infrastructure in place to make sure folks weren't waiting for quality care, whether you're a child or an adult. COVID hits and everything gets blown up and exacerbated again. So now the state we're not slowing down, we're made huge investments. We just bought Hampstead Hospital, a mental health hospital just for kids. And it isn't just for the most extreme acute care. Out of that hospital we're now bringing in private providers from outside of the state. Little known secret, for years, a lot of outside providers weren't really let into the state. It was kind of a protect your fiefdom. And when I realized that was happening, I got really ticked off. Right? All that matters is the result. I don't care about the contracts. I don't care about protecting your fiefdom. I just want better expertise and specialization to help these damn kids that are going through so much. And so we're breaking down all those doors. Is it ruffling some feathers? Yes. Do I care? No. Because at the end of the day, I know we're going to get better care. So we're buying Hampstead Hospital, expanding the beds there for kids, bringing in private providers from right out in Massachusetts, some of the best in the world in mental health, especially for children, are right there in Massachusetts, inviting them to be part of our solution, getting more community-based solutions instead of just one centralized centralized solution in Concord or something like that, more community-based solutions there, making those emergency response teams, something as simple, and Martha's here somewhere. God bless Martha Dickey. Where are you? I know, I always highlight Martha. She's the best. Martha has really helped champion so many of the big things that we're doing. But something so simple, like idea number 155 coming out of Martha was, why don't we just have a mental health hotline on the back of every kid's student ID? So simple, right? So when crisis does happen, you never know it's there. The parent or a family member says, boom, right there. We at least know first stop who to call, right? Make it a one-stop shop, if you will. Open that door. Something so simple like that, letting these ideas really come to fruition, can really make a huge change. We have two other big investments going into private mental health hospitals, one in the Seacoast, one in the Manchester area. States just put up $15 million to match private money to come in. We've never done anything like that in this state. We're not going to own and run it, but we're putting up the money to guarantee the beds are there, to guarantee that the workforce comes in, the specialization is there, so that we can kind of drink off of that, if you will, and make sure the whole system is much more robust. Opioids, right? We remember in 2016, 2017, New Hampshire's the tip of the spear on the opioid crisis, and we were. The former president said some pretty unflattering things about New Hampshire. I took exception to that. Called us a drug den or something like that. That was an awkward conversation with the White House one morning, but it was the right conversation to have, and he never said anything again, if you noticed. But at the end of the day, I said, this system just isn't working. We can't just keep plowing more money and more money and more money into a system where the drug overdose deaths are doing this, right? That's just pushing harder, but in the same failing direction. So I said, we're going to do this differently. And I realized that rural access to care was really critical. Why were the addiction rates in COAS 4 times that of Manchester? That's a little unknown thing people didn't realize. Why? There was no access to care. There were no treatment centers, there were no recovery centers, there was no wraparound services. So we invented things like recovery-friendly workplaces, wraparound transitional housing, different modes of recovery, because recovery is different for everyone. For some people, recovery can happen in a year and 18 months, and for some people, it's a lifelong challenge. But where you live shouldn't determine your access to those services. So we blew the whole system up, ruffled a few feathers, and created the doorway system. It's been phenomenal. Over the last 2 years, this is a tragic piece of data. In America, overdose deaths have gone from about 60,000 to over 100,000 in America. We're the only state in the country, we've gone down the last 2 years. We're down 20%. It's working. We got a long way to go. Let's not take a victory lap on that. But we are bucking the national trends, not just bucking the national trends, we're the only state in the country where drug overdose deaths are down. So this new system that we're trying, that we're working with, is clearly having some results. So we're finally headed in the right direction. And now we can look at, well, this might have worked, and that, you know what, that didn't work as well as we thought. This new idea that we brought in, maybe that wasn't 100%. Let's shift funding over here. Great, right? We got the system going in the right direction, now we can tweak it. But it requires management, it requires staying on top of this stuff, not giving up, not losing focus on it just because COVID came. And I'm very proud. I think our team at Health and Human Services has really done a great job helping manage that with those community-based services. The doorway is community-based. It's in COAS, it's in Grafton, it's in the Seacoast, it's in Manchester. So, and Concord Hospital's been great, by the way. They've been a huge champion of the program here. So, again, focusing on the economy, focusing on the financial opportunities allows us to invest in these things and gives us a little bit of the flexibility to try new stuff. And we become leaders on it, right? So, let me back up there. I don't really read speeches, obviously. Oh, someone else asked me about the gas tax. Yeah, we need a gas tax reprieve, by the way. I saw on the front page of the paper the legislature's looking at a 2-month gas tax reprieve just to hedge off some of this inflationary stuff. It will only be for a couple months, but I think it says the right thing. You know, we're 22 cents per gallon. Is that really going to make a hill of beans a difference when you're paying $4.22? It makes a little bit of a difference, and especially for lower income families, it can be a difference maker, at least over a couple months. We can't do it forever, but I'm really encouraging the legislature to look very strongly at it. I think they're getting a little sideways on where to go. They have a couple days to figure it out, and I think everyone needs to push them to figure it out, because we have the money, right? We have the surplus. When you have a strong economy and you cut taxes, business comes in, the revenues go like this, that's why, I mean, it's situations like this, why you focus so hard on that, so we can dip into that rainy day fund. We've tripled. The rainy day fund when I became governor was $65 million. It's $250 million right now. And inflationarily wise, is that a word, inflationarily? It's like a George Bush word or something. Inflationarily wise, you can quote me on that for the press, it's raining. In fact, it's pouring, right? So let's use a little bit of that rainy day fund or a little bit of our surplus and provide some of that relief. To everyone in the state, I think it would be actually booming for business. You cut the gas prices by 22 cents. Believe me, every trucker in New England is stopping here to buy gas, and when they do, they're going to go into the store and buy their groceries and their whatever they buy. I mean, people use gas stations for grocery shopping now, right? They're really grocery stores now. That's where you make all the money. All those stores along every border in the state are going to boom as everybody kind of piles in to buy our gas. That's even just a quarter difference. A quarter on the dollar difference can really make a huge difference to folks. So I think there's opportunities there to take advantage of stuff like that. So anything we can do because we've been economically successful to offset some of those inflationary costs, I think that's the opportunity. All right, I will shut up. Tim, if you want me to take questions, if you're all upset with me and want me to go home, I'll go home too. That's fine. Well, I won't going home. I'm just going to big, great building, Gold Dome. You can find me there.
We'd love you to stick around and take some questions.
Sure.
If anybody would like to ask a question and be heard, please feel free to come up to the microphone and ask that way, although you can shout it from your seat as well.
And run at the back.
I'm going to prime the pump a little bit
Sure.
because just coming very locally. Can you talk a little bit about the plan, which I just learned a little bit about the other day, about tearing down the Store Street garage and building a garage where the Department of Justice building is? And
Sure. The new parking garage idea. So the old Store Street parking garage, I'll just tell you, I don't park in it. I mean, that thing is not in great shape. It really does need to be replaced one way or the other. The House of Representatives and the legislature kind of own the responsibility for that because bulk, far and large, that's where their members park. So the idea is to take the old Department of Justice, the old Attorney General's office, which is kind of off the corner of the State House, tear that down, build a better garage, which is, again, a block off Main Street. It would help Main Street as well. And then we'll move the folks in the Department of Justice out to... Yeah, it's a Lincoln Financial Building, right? Technically, yeah. Sorry, I was about to say Liberty, which is a little further up, but it's actually much nicer digs for them. A little more inconvenient because it makes it a little harder. They have to get in. But that's the idea. It's about $35 million. I think they are looking to appropriate. The legislature is looking to appropriate that. And I said, look, if that's what they need to do, and the folks are on board, I think I just wanted to insist that they talk to the city and make sure it's done in a synergistic way. And it seems like they've done that. And I think my sense is it'll be a good project. I haven't seen it. I can't tell you how many parking spots it would have technically. Maybe that's in the paper. I think that was discussed.
600, I think.
600 spots. Oh, that's a lot. Yeah, so that's kind of what I know about it, and they got to do it. I mean, whether it's replacing the Store Street piece or doing it over here, and the legislature really wanted to do it with the Department of Justice, and that's fine. And the Attorney General and his team were okay with it. Yeah, so they'll be fine. The Attorney General will be just fine. You can go up or shout, whatever you like. Yeah.
Quick question, and this is great, Governor, that you're talking about affordable housing, which is clearly an issue throughout the state. The question that I have is how do you balance that as a state and really also local government or local towns with all of the Airbnbs and, weekly housing that's really taking up a lot of the rental?
Yeah, so a couple of things. The real question is how do you balance kind of the workforce, multifamily housing with what you're seeing with Airbnbs and all that kind of stuff, because that's like a whole new dynamic across the whole country, but especially here in New Hampshire because we're a tourism state. So I got to be careful because I know there is a bill right now, and one of the bills, it's a tough one. It's a really tough one, and I can honestly I really mean it. I have no idea how I'm going to vote on this one, and if it gets to my desk. One of the bills basically says that cities and towns can no longer tell someone they can't have an Airbnb commercial, effectively rent their house out, and rent their house out for an Airbnb, which is really telling the cities and towns you can't zone anymore this type of product, right? Because it's a commercial enterprise. You're getting paid to allow a stranger to come in and use your property, and it's your property. You should be able to do what you want with it. Everyone, I think, totally agrees with that. But with so much of it happening, there's a lot of towns saying, look, we're not going to ban it altogether, but we have to have some potential controls on this because it does change the dynamics of neighborhoods and all that sort of thing. I cannot put a Dairy Queen, as much as I might like Dairy Queen, on my property, right? Because there's zoning issues there and you have to go through the town process. But this kind of has the state come down with a big, heavy hand and say to the cities and towns, yeah, we believe in local control, but not this. Boom. The state is going to have the final say, and you can't control anything in your town around this issue. So I'm all about the personal freedom issue, but do you support personal freedoms and land rights and all that sort of thing by telling a town that they can't have any local controls, right? It's a tough one. So that's my very vague, and I'll give you the political answer, and it's really the real answer. You've got to have balance. I'm not a big believer in banning things unless it's something really, really obvious and bad, right? I think the government should at most stay out of that. This would ban the ability of a town to put in controls of their own. Do I think a town should be able to ban that product altogether in their town? No, I don't think that. I think it should translate all the way down. So I think we just need to be better about working with our cities and towns to find that balance. That's it, because I don't think banning is the answer. Once you ban something, it's hard to unban it, and then you get the lawsuits and all of this. The answer is everyone has to understand this is kind of a new dynamic. I think you need Airbnbs. I think you need all of that kind of stuff. You probably need more of them in the North Country potentially than you do in downtown Exeter, right? Potentially, or downtown Manchester because of the tourism factor. But there's got to be balance in there, and I just don't know if having the state being a heavy hand in forcing the issue is the right way to go. I'm not sure if I answered your question the way we were expecting an answer, but that's it. It's a new dynamic issue. 10 years ago, no one really knew what Airbnb was. It was very rarely done. It's now such a major part of our economy. But here's one for you. Should I be able to put 5 different families in my house? Airbnb. Should I be able to rent all, I don't have 5 bedrooms in my house, but I have 3 bedrooms. So should I be able to have 3 different families? I mean, that's basically, and Airbnb, if you do it for the long term, you kind of shortcut and get past all of the rental agreements and long-term rental obligations and all that legal aspect of having a renter. But technically someone could Airbnb into perpetuity, right? And just get around that whole system. So are we creating a system where people are just getting around the system? I'd rather find some balance and hopefully encourage folks to make the right decision at a local level and work it out at the town level, as opposed to the state having a one-size-fits-all hammer that forces anything. What else you got? Come on. Okay.
All right, so obviously the state is in great financial shape, and you get a lot of credit for that. I want to ask you if there are 1 or 2 things that are keeping you up at night. What would they be?
Oh, 1 or 2 things. Having to do public service and government. I got 2 teenagers, so a lot keeps me up at night as a dad. The housing thing does. I think that's very real. Give me 30 seconds on that. What really keeps me up? Look, I could tell you that the next winter surge of COVID keeps me up, but it really doesn't. We're constantly working on it, just behind the scenes. We don't make a big deal out of it, but every day I'm still having a conversation with the C word, right? Because I'm planning for another surge. I hope I'm dead wrong. I mean, it would be awesome if I was so wrong about it and we never really see the hospitalization and healthcare surge. I think COVID's going to go up and down. You're seeing it already in England, but you're not seeing the fatalities. It's kind of working like Omicron. This B2 variant is working like... So being wrong, really wrong about that, I get nervous about, but I still know I'm prepared. I think we've got a great team. We work synergistically. We handle it better than almost anybody. So I think we're prepared in that. I think, if anything, the mental health stuff with kids. We're right on the precipice of making these big investments. And just to be really blunt, don't mean any true offense to other public servants in the room, but if the legislature screws this up, if the council screws this up, the happy-go-lucky Chris Sununu ain't going to be very happy-go-lucky, because there's too much of an opportunity to get this right. And it's right there. The answers are there. The investments are there. The funding is there. We're not asking people to bond. We're not raising taxes. This is the time to make those investments on mental health. I think mental health is truly, it was the unspoken crisis in 2017. It is truly the next 20-year crisis. Kids especially. There's a whole new dynamic going on with kids, their integration with devices, with social media, with disconnection. I mean, kids think they're connecting to a community when they're on social media. Social media, you've heard me say before, it's the bane of human existence. It's the worst thing in the world. It's wonderful, but it's the worst thing in the world. It's an amazing technology that none of us have the maturity to handle. We don't, as humans. The technology was too good for us to truly understand its power, and we handle it massively irresponsibly. And we haven't led by example with our kids. Social media for a kid is like walking around, it's like being in New York City. Oh, I'm surrounded by 12 million people. What an incredibly huge community. And it's the loneliest place on earth, right? You ever walk? It is. Same with social media. You're not part of a community. You're yelling to the world and you're seeing all these comments back and forth, but no one's talking, right? Everyone's got something to say, but no one's talking, no one's connecting, no one's communicating. And so this next generation of kids don't understand that. They really don't. They haven't had the right practice, the right example, if you will, of that kind of connectivity. And they rely on it so much, it's pulling them apart. And that disconnection, that leads to the mental, that really exacerbates any smaller mental health issue, becomes exacerbated. Exactly what happened when they went to remote schools. I mean, look at the kids in California right now, with those schools being closed for so long. People are, I forced the schools open before 2020 spring year ended, right? We kept schools closed, one of the shortest amount of times in the country, and thank God we did. Because they had to get back with those teachers. They had to get back in those classrooms. And I get it, a lot of communities still wanted masks and all that. Look, they worked that out, that's fine, they got through it. But the fact the kids were in the classroom was so critical. I'm scared to death of these other mental health issues, especially with kids really getting exacerbated, not for the next couple of years, but for the next 20. That is gonna keep me up, sorry. Yeah. Hey, Byron.
Governor, good to see you. Not a softball question. As a father of three little boys, grandfather of three little boys in the state, I'm glad to hear your focus on children and child mental health. Another elephant in the room, though, is DCYS. If we give you the opportunity to create another budget with the legislature, would you please work with them to adequately fund DCYS so that we have child welfare workers who are not burnt out, who are not overwhelmed with caseloads, and so that we don't lose another little boy or little girl in the system?
Sure. So let's talk frankly about that. When I became governor, the average child care worker had 90 cases. And I created all these new positions, and we filled a lot of them. The average child care worker right now has 16. It's manageable. They can work on the prevention programs that I put in. All right, I'm going to get a little political and start taking credit. Previous administration did nothing on this issue. When I came in, I had to fire all the top dogs at DCYF. The previous administration, Maggie, wouldn't do it. We changed the paradigm. We put in the state had no prevention programs for kids under abuse and child welfare. We were always reacting to the crisis. So we got the caseworker stuff down. We funded them so much with so many positions, we can't even fill those positions. I mean, that's one of the challenges. We have vacant positions today. I could put more money in there, but I still can't fill the positions that I've already funded is one of the challenges. We want to increase wages and all that. That's fine. I'm open to all of that. But understand there's a workforce challenge going on here across the board. We have more kids now leaving foster care than entering foster care. First time in 20 years that has happened under my administration. I'm very proud of that. And I take real umbrage when people start bashing on DCYF. Have we had real challenging cases? You bet. Tragedies. You know the stories of Harmony. You know the stories of all these. I mean, it's really, really tough stuff. But that doesn't mean that when you have one tragedy, you just throw the whole system under the bus. We fundamentally have changed how we approach all of this. We're super transparent about it. The issue with Harmony came up. A lot of people said, Governor, you can't talk about it. It's all private. This is private family stuff. I said, screw all that. We're going out and we're going to be very public about it. Because this is a public story, and I still believe we can bring Harmony home safe. And the more information we get out there, we'll do it. Other administrations, nope, they button their lip and move on. Try to find a different headline. I've taken that challenge head on. And when people make it political, when people say we're not funding it appropriately, look at the data. You didn't stand up here when Maggie Hassan was governor and say, Governor, you have 90 cases per worker. They're leaving in droves. And nobody is getting the care that they really need. Silence out of most of the crowd. So I get a little ticked off because I think Joe Ripsom has done a phenomenal job. There wasn't even a child advocate before I was governor. We actually have an independent child advocate fighting for these kids and holding the entire system accountable. DCYF, freaking disaster. The Sununu Center, I hate that it's called the Sununu Center, by the way, in case you can't tell. Gonna mow that thing down. We're transitioning to a completely different community-based, integrated-based level of care for even kids that are the most troubled and frankly the most dangerous sometimes. It's not just about locking them up and putting them in juvie. That is, again, old school thinking. So I'm going to take that Sununu Center in Manchester, bulldoze that thing right to the ground, and put these kids in better community-based care with the wraparound mental health services that they deserve. Not the previous administration, my administration. So I get fiery. I get fired on that issue because we spend so much time on it. Do I have all the answers? Heck no, I don't. I really don't have all the answers. But I will try anything and everything if someone brings a good idea to the table. I don't care about it, right? When we put our whole mental health group together when I first became governor to take this crisis head on, I didn't know the political affiliation of anyone at that table. I just knew they were the best and the brightest and had been in the system. Our 10-year mental health plan, the previous plan wasn't even enacted, right? We're getting sued when I became governor on the mental health. So I said, okay, we're going to rewrite that 10-year mental health plan. Ken Norton, the head of NAMI, phenomenal. He's retired. Huge loss for the state, by the way. But he was head of NAMI, which really led a lot of the mental health initiatives in the state. So we brought everyone together, and I said, okay, Governor, we're going to rewrite the 10-year mental health plan. I said, great, that's great. And they said, okay, we're going to have this person in this department do that part, and this department person from education do that part. I said, no, stop. The parents are going to write this thing. We're not going to have a bunch of bureaucrats sitting behind a desk that have been part of the same broken system for 20 years write our 10-year mental health plan. How far are we going to get? So I brought in all the stakeholders. We did 20 public meetings around the state, and my team's job was just to take notes, write down what everyone says. Sometimes they're really tough personal stories, and we can't wave a magic wand and make all those personal issues and those challenges go away. Dealing with kids and parents and broken families is so hard, it's so emotional. But we're going to take in whole where those recommendations are, find out where they're funding, where I can do with executive order, what we need legislation for, where the feds are being a barrier, where the legal system isn't working, what are the courts doing, what are we doing internally, what are our community providers doing, and get them all together, right? And it's working. We are making huge strides there, which is why we can start making these big investments going forward. So our 10-year mental health plan, we've enacted now 85% of it in 3 years, which is pretty great, and it was all written by parents. It was all written by the stakeholders that are dealing with these challenges every day. Is everything in that plan 100% going to solve? No, guys. We have so many other external, environmental, societal factors that are really going to exacerbate our mental health problems, which lead to the issues with kids and DCYF and abusive kids. It's not that one is directly related to there, but they're all interconnected. And then you have the opioid crisis, right? It's a Venn diagram. There's crossover in all these worlds. So I forced these silos to start coming together. Here's one for you. I'm just going to go off. So when I first became governor, and my wife, Valerie, God bless her. If you ever see my wife, I call her the unicorn. Has anyone ever actually seen her? She exists, trust me. She's beautiful, she's amazing, she's absolutely brilliant, but she don't come out too often. And so if you see her, you better take a picture. But one of the things she really focuses on is kids. She was a special ed teacher for kids with some of the most severe special ed needs, and she understood IEPs. I mean, here's a tangent to my tangent story. We are now one of the only states in the country where if your child has an IEP, the fulfillment of that IEP, the onus is now on the system, not on you as a parent, because it's a 100-page legal document. Most parents don't even understand that, right? You can't expect them to. So it's up to the system to make sure the parent is guided through that, as opposed to the parent, well, here's your document, good luck, hope you and your kid, can get through it. We've changed the responsibility there, which has been huge. But Valerie came in and she said, well, I'm talking to these folks at HHS on child welfare and well-being, the Council on Thriving Children, all that. And I'm talking to these folks over at the Department of Education, and they seem to know each other, but they've never met. And it's true, they had never met. There were these emails going back and forth with these people. And finally, I called this one young lady that was working at education. I said, do you know Mary at HHS? She goes, oh yeah, of course I know her. She said, I've been working with her for like 12 years. I said, oh, okay, great. Could you meet, could we all get together? She goes, well, I've never met her. I swear to God, she said that. I said, really? She goes, no, we do emails and we'll call. All right, so I brought in like 40, or this is really Valerie, 50 people from HHS that deal with child welfare, 50 people from the Department of Education that deal with some of the same issues. We all went to the Bridges house and had lunch, and holy cow, they were trading cards. They all work for state government, but they're all trading cards. And it really made sure the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. That's the key to all this. Sometimes it's the left and right hand within government, sometimes it's the left and right hand within parents and teachers, or the left and the right hand with parents and the mental health system. But everyone's got to be talking. Doesn't mean we all agree. Doesn't mean politics doesn't get in the way sometimes. But when you bring those people together and that communication starts synergistically working, like we did with COVID, we did it very publicly. But behind the scenes, I can tell you, there's no deep state. There's just bad communication. Well, at least I can't speak for Washington. I don't know about that. But all I can talk to you about is New Hampshire. There's not some conspiracy. There's not lazy. People say, oh, those government workers are elite. They're not. especially people over at HHS. They give everything every single day, and most government workers could go make a lot better salary in the private sector. I get it. I appreciate all of them. So the key isn't some sort of neglect. The key is making sure that the communication's there, the funding is there, and that we're truthful about where we need to go and what the real barriers are, not just give us more money and it'll get better. Right? We've pounded so much money into the system, but you got to have the right system. I really am in a great mood. I don't mean to go fiery off like that. So someone give me a really good question. I love chocolate chip ice cream. That's what. Yeah.
Governor, thank you for your leadership. What message can you deliver to young couples looking to buy their first single-family home when there are just so many people out there looking to buy the same thing? I have a 32-year-old stepdaughter, just got married last August. Her and her husband are looking for a home. They got plenty of money. They make great money between them. We've gone to a few open houses with them, my wife and I. You go to an open house, and not only do they have the money, but what you're doing is not only they can afford it, but they're bidding against 20 other people in the same home. When I bought my home 30-something years ago, it was just me and the sellers of the home. Now, I mean, they're getting frustrated because they're thinking, are we ever going to be able to get a single family?
Yeah.
Because it's crazy.
Economics 101, supply and demand. My job is, I really believe we need to build more. And I've had a lot of people say, well, the government's never invested in this type of multifamily housing. It's a private endeavor. You shouldn't, and someone said, Governor, you shouldn't be telling people what to build. I'm not telling you what you have to build. I'm just telling you what the priorities of the state are and what we're going to invest in. You want to go build $1 million condos, that's on you. But from the state's perspective, I need the workers. And I got $100 million in surplus, that's where I'm going to actually invest it. And so I really do believe if we can just create more supply, and the demand will always be there, but as supply goes up, prices go down, you got to flood the market. We're at less than a 1% vacancy rate. That is very unhealthy. You'd have to have some real experts, but you want about a 3.5% to 5% vacancy rate. That's a pretty healthy flow. You know what I mean? So that's my strategy. Build more, and taking the challenge head on. Not just build more in Concord. Hey, Concord, go build more. You guys do a great job with it. Hey, Manchester, go build more. That's not it, right? We Millipore Sigma is down in Rindge, New Hampshire, I believe, right? Really rural area. It's an amazing company. They're going to grow with by 400 or 500 employees in Rindge. Where are they going to live? So I need those surrounding towns. And by the way, that's where that younger generation wants to live. They want to go mountain biking and hiking and be out either in the mountains or out at the ocean or whatever it is. And so really exploring and expanding our opportunity in those smaller towns, getting their zoning up to speed, helping them find the professionals to make sure it's crafted right. And there's some, I got to give credit, like an example I use a lot is Walpole. Anyone ever been out to Walpole? Beautiful town out on the Connecticut River. Walpole did one of these projects. It was fantastic. It looks like a beautiful giant red barn out in the woods. But inside, it's made with sustainable materials. It's low to middle income housing. It's multifamily housing. It was done so well. And it's right into the architecture of the town. It isn't like these big concrete Section 8 housing of 1975 and all that. That is so old school thinking. You can use the architecture and the design to mix right into the charm of your town. And maybe it's just 12 units here and 5 units there and 50 units there. It doesn't have to be a 200-person apartment building. We're trying to make towns realize the opportunities they have. And if they do that, and by the way, if your business is, you should be going to your towns. If you're a business, you're one of the biggest taxpayers in your town, and you got to knock on that selectman, that budget, that planning board's door and say, guys, we need you to find a way to make this work. We're not just saying cookie cutter an apartment building into town, but I can't be successful if I don't have the workers. I'm one of your biggest taxpayers. I hope you listen to me. Find a way to get some multifamily housing in here so young families know that this is an attractive place to be.
I have two questions. First one, as a Kentucky fan, why in the world would you have this way?
St. Pete's all the way. Sorry. I'm a Catholic. St. Mary, St. Pete, San Francisco, I picked them all in the first round.
You talk a lot about the $100 million plan for affordable housing, and that is great, and much of that is going to go to the cities and towns. My question is, do you anticipate any of that money going to help combat the increase in construction costs that we're experiencing, which is the major barrier to building affordable housing these days?
Absolutely. So I apologize if I didn't explain. About half, 60 million of my plan goes to the developers. It's money to offset your financial risk. 30 million goes to kind of the award to towns to speed up the local process. 5 million is the demolition fund. There's another 5 or 10 million in there that helps towns update their zoning and planning. Sometimes towns, they can't hire the right lawyers, or they haven't updated their zoning in decades sometimes. So there's just some money in there to bring some professionalism to the table for those towns that don't have all the means and expertise. Concord is great, Manchester's great, but you go up to Lyman, their zoning board meets like once a month, and to say, hey, you need to update your plan, they can be like, well, we can't hire a professional to do that. We don't have the funds. Now you do, right? Now we'll bring that in. But about 50 or 60 million would go to offset developer costs too. Probably last dollar in type formula, but the dollars are in. To offset the inflation in the supply chain, yeah. It's amazing. A lot of businesses, as you guys know, your cash is literally sitting on a boat outside of Los Angeles, right? Because you've bought product, you've paid for it, you don't have the product, so it's effectively your money is sitting out on that boat because your product isn't actually in your store, or you're not being able to use it to actually fulfill on your contract. So I know that the credit issue, I think, is going to get very interesting in the next year, because I think a lot of people are going to have to start drawing down on their lines of credit. And the good thing, the financial system nationally is very healthy, and we have great local banks here. We just got a ribbon on another primary bank down in Nashua, but those lines of credit, I think, are going to start getting used a little bit too. But yeah, the money's there for the build, for the bricks and mortar. Oh, okay.
Jim Marina's representing Regret to be the Mental Health Center.
Sure.
And I was going to ask you, what can you do with the state government to help incentivize getting younger workers to work in the mental health field?
Sure. So a couple of things. So I'm going to talk about mental health and nursing at the same time, right? It's people that want to go into the field of care of others, if you will. So for example, on the nursing side, I put money in to double the number of nursing spots just at UNH. And that we cut the ribbon on that a year ago. No, not even, maybe 6 months ago. And that program is already up and running. We've expanded the ability to have certain programs of nursing within the community college. You couldn't get your LPN. You couldn't get an LPN license in New Hampshire. You could be licensed by the board, but you couldn't actually get a license because there's no school that actually offered those programs. It was crazy. We have 3 or 4 programs that will do that now. On the mental health side, I had a deal on the table to say, let's build a mental health teaching school, a teaching school for psychiatry and psychology and therapy and all of that. We found that the programs we have in state still aren't filling their seats. The problem that we found was that, from the community, was that a lot of folks that kids that, I'll just say kids or young people, that get their degrees in specialization, we don't have a great system of placement. In other words, when they're going to do their clinicals, or they're going to actually do, I forget what you call them when you're working actually in the mental health field, even as a student, you got to kind of figure it out on your own. And what's happening is they're going down to Massachusetts, because all those great private providers I talked about that we're trying to get in here, they're still primarily in Massachusetts. And there's such a high need down there, they're running down to do that. And what happens? They build relationships, they get their permanent job offers down there. And so we have a mass exodus, if you will, of the few folks within mental health that we're growing on the tree, we're losing them to mass. So the response is, bring those providers over here. And I'm working out a deal with there's one group that does it really well. It's Dartmouth, I don't mind saying. Dartmouth is probably the best in the state at the placements. They do a lot of the placements within New Hampshire Hospital, our mental health hospital. They're one of the best providers of mental health services in the state. And they have an awesome system to make sure they don't lose their students outside the system. I'm asking them to basically take over the state system, to create, if you will, a state system, not just for themselves and their students, but for everybody. And so that's one of the biggest challenges we're trying to head off. Here's another one for you. I think we need to start talking about these programs back in freshman and sophomore year of high school, right? Get kids excited about opportunities that they might be interested in very, very early on. Don't wait till they graduate high school or community college or four-year college to say, hey, you should consider mental health and practice and therapy and psychology and psychotherapy as a field. Get them involved in that kind of early basic classes early on through the CTEs, through the public education process. That's school choice. People always say school choice is public versus private. Again, you're thinking like it's 1985. School choice is about when we have some of the best public schools in the country, the best public teachers in the country are right here. But let's make sure that that student in that public system has a choice and a pathway for what might excite them about coming, excite them about their career opportunities. And so getting those programs a little more embedded, it's hard with mental health, but getting those programs a little more embedded earlier on in that public education process hopefully creates that warm handoff so they want to stay here as part of our system. We grow the programs in the community, in the college and the university system, and then you have a group like Dartmouth that helps that placement, helps retain them within our system here so that we get the warm handoff ultimately. And if you do that and you bring in these private providers, you really become a place where people want to be. We're making investments in 3 new mental health hospitals. We're making big investments in mental health with kids. That word gets out across New England and people go, let's go to New Hampshire. They got a better quality of life. They don't have the taxes. They have some of the best providers up there. They're making huge investments. As a young person entering that field, do I want to be in downtown Boston with all the tough things you have to deal with there? The taxes, the bureaucracy, the traffic? Or do I want a young person in that field, be in a place like New Hampshire that's making the investments and doing right by it? It doesn't happen overnight, but I think that's where I was a little critical early on. I don't want the legislature and the council and these contracts to fail now. We got this momentum, we got wind behind our backs. If we can kind of commit to the next couple months and making sure this stuff really comes to fruition, I really think it sets us up for the long term to really build on a system that needs a lot of help.
Governor, you promised 1 o'clock, and it's just about 1 o'clock, and I want to thank you so much. Brutal.
I did it to myself, though. I did it to myself. Look, we got a lot of opportunity. If I can just close, Tim, I apologize. Super opportunity, amazing businesses, strong economy. Take none of it for granted. It is not by accident. It is really by design, right? By cutting taxes, getting rid of regulation, keeping good policies that put people, individuals, and businesses first, not government. As the head of government, I'm telling you, don't just think that government's going to solve your problem. I'm not here to solve your problem. I'm here to create doors of opportunity. As many doors as possible for you, or your family, or your business, or whatever. And then you pick one you want to walk through, right? You do you. That's really what Live Free or Die is all about. And we've been very, very successful with that model. And I think if we can stay that track, you guys keep doing what you're doing, so much opportunity that helps invest into the mission of DCYF, of mental health, of opioids, of all of these really tough things that we can all acknowledge and we all know that's there, but really do need new systems of design to actually help move it forward. You guys keep doing your thing. That creates opportunity for us. We fulfill a mission. Rising tide floats all boats. Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming, and also just one final thanks to Lincoln Financial Group for sponsoring today's event. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you at the next chamber event.